Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's great to have you with us today. This year's World Water Day on the 22nd of March reminds us that water and equality are deeply connected and that improving water access can unlock opportunities for millions of people, especially women and girls. At the Swarovski Foundation, we are proud to work with our partner, the IHE Delft Institute for Water and Education, to help address exactly that. Together, we provide scholarships that support young women from the Global South to pursue world-class water education. Many of these scholars go on to become influential water leaders in their communities, shaping policies, managing water systems, and driving real change on the ground. This partnership is rooted in a simple belief: when women gain access to tools to lead, entire communities benefit. And with that spirit of shared learning and empowerment, we are excited to begin our Water Security Masterclasses series, open to everyone, no technical background needed. Today's session is titled Water Reuse and the Circular Economy, From Waste to Resource. Over the next hour, you will hear from leading expert Tania Vasconcelos Fernandez, Professor of Ecotechnologies for Circular Economy at IHE Delft, about how wastewater is being transformed into valuable resources and why circular innovation is essential for resilient communities, thriving industries, and a sustainable future. Thank you all for joining, and let's dive right in.
So, welcome everybody. I will not introduce myself, of course, because it has been done. So I will start with the problem, and I would like to just tell people if you have questions along the way. So I see we have 1 hour that I'm going to present some of the concepts and things that we do, create a bit of awareness as well. But if there is something along the way that you think, oh, this is not clear, or you can always interrupt me. That is fine. Or you can put a comment on the chat that we can go back to it later. That's also fine. I will not be reading my chat during when I'm talking because I cannot multifunction that much, but multitask. But please, if you want to put chat, then you can, and if there is something that you want to interrupt, it's also fine for me. Okay.
Tanya, I will be monitoring the chat because their mic will be off during your presentation. So all the audience, they will not be able to switch on their mics. But there is a Q&A box that they could put their questions, and like maybe in halfway, you could stop for 5 minutes or 2 minutes to check if there is any question. If there is not, we continue until the end and we check again. Is that fine?
Yeah, sure.
Amazing. Thanks.
Okay, so let's get to it. First, I have to share. Sorry, always a good start. Okay, so first, I want to get a bit of a notion of why we are actually doing this. So we are with many, and we keep on being with more and more and more. And there is this perception that it is very cozy to be with a lot of people, but it puts a lot of stress in our planet. And I am now 50 years old. So, and if we look in the last 50 years, our population has doubled. And what I find really more scary as an ecologist as well is that even though our population has doubled, we have increased our consumption habits. So, for instance, our water consumption has increased sixfold in the last 50 years. And we went from, eating vegetables at a certain time according to the seasons and being way more conscious about what we would eat, what the field has to offer, to eating everything that we want to have at, 24/7. We now eat strawberries the whole year round with no consideration if we should actually be doing that or not. Also, we use way more resources. So it's not only that we would have the telephone and the old television in one per house But now everybody has screens everywhere, and all these elements are needed to make all these screens. And so we have increased our consumption habits so much that actually it's destroying the world as we know it. And one of the major issues is our water quality. So a lot of people are not aware that water is, it's not a finite resources because it always stays in our planet, but the quality of that water generally globally is decreasing because we are increasing the number of pollutants in our systems, doesn't matter any system that includes water. And besides that, also there are other issues that also have an effect with water and also the global planet. Is that, for example, we have probably you are aware, like in our countries, we have intensive agriculture, and usually we fertilize the soils with nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium, and so it's very limited the nutrients that we put into the soil. But for crops to grow, they need a wide variety of nutrients, and our soils always had these nutrients. But because we take our crops and we just put a limited number of nutrients, our soils are also being depleted of elements. And I know that most people understand that the decrease on biodiversity is that you have less insects and you have less species. But what a lot of people miss to see is that the lack of biodiversity is happening already on the soil. So in the soil, sorry. So we have less diversity in the soil, and that will makes the soil less healthy, and therefore our crops less healthy. So the whole ecosystem. And we see that the way that we are doing things nowadays, that we are already crossing 6 of the planetary boundaries, and this is very concerning because you see here in the middle, the planet, the green part is when we actually use the resources that we have, and what this red extension in several fields describes is that we are way beyond these planetary boundaries, which in reality what it means is that, for instance, when we have with climate change, for instance, we actually don't know what is going to happen. So in ecology, this is known as tipping points. So it might be that we go so far from what is the safe operating space of the planet that we get into another steady state, so another state of an ecosystem that is actually, we cannot live in that state. And the problem if you go too far is that you can't easily go back. That is in all ecosystems is like that. So we are entering an era that we actually are doing a lot of wrongdoing, but we don't know what is exactly the consequence of that. And of course, this has consequences not only in terms of the planet, but everything else that has repercussions from our resources and the way we share our resources and the lack of justice that is nowadays seen in the world. So one thing is clear is that we need change. And I am a very optimistic person, even though I do know a lot of what is going on, and it is, especially nowadays, it is very demotivating, especially when you look at the news. I do think that we are creating a new generation that is very much in favor of the change that we need, that is fighting for the rights of the planet and also fighting for rights of equality. So And these rights are very much in the line of the sustainability development goals that our institute and lots of organizations all over the world use as the base for their work. And I think they are indeed nicely guiding a lot of work done in all sorts of different areas. And if we look at Europe, specifically the last 5 years, I would say, there is a higher focus on the circular economy, because we've realized that actually that there is an end to it. So we need to be able to recover our resources. So we need, when you come from most systems, but especially wastewater, we have wastewater treatment for about 150 years. So this was with the Industrial Revolution. In London, there was this, what they called the Great Stink. So there was a cholera outbreak. People were all dying. And then we said, okay, we're going to have wastewater treatment systems so we can, increase public health and safeguard public health. And so wastewater treatment plants were designed in a way that, that you would just treat this wastewater. And all our system, the way we live is very much focused on, we take materials, we make things, right? We then use them, we dispose them, and we pollute the environment. And the wastewater treatment should be able to tackle that part of the pollution. But the thing is that we do not see it as a resource. So with the circular economy, we actually want to close these cycles. So we don't, it's not a linear way that we take and we pollute, but we actually reuse it back into our society. And this is actually what nature has been doing forever. In nature, there is no waste. So the waste of one is usually the resource of another organism. And this is what I think we should be doing, and I am not alone on this. There is a whole trend of people that think that this is going to be the only way that we can actually survive in this planet. So when we look at water, water starts from the sky, as we all know, and water by itself, it's very pure, very valuable. And when it rains and it enters our systems, it gets used for all sorts of applications, and it gets added all sorts of pollutants and compounds to this water. So we then create a lot of wastewater from this water. And if you see that we produce about 50 cubic meters per year per capita of wastewater, only a bit more than half of that is actually collected. And from the one that is collected, only about half is treated. And from that treated, only about 10% is actually reused. And this is definitely what we will need to change in the future. So what does wastewater have that we can recover? So it has water, and you will see that most of the initiatives all over the world, so not only the water stress regions, but all over the world, you see that most initiatives that want to reuse wastewater, they focus a lot on the water itself. So, and this water can be used for households as a second quality water, can be used for irrigation of fields, but it can also be used for industry, like for cooling elements in an industry. It's also increasingly used. And then you have the second most used element is carbon. And carbon has been used for a very long time, actually. If you look at ancient China, they would already have anaerobic digesters where they would have all this waste being without oxygen, and then they would produce the biogas and they would cook on the biogas. So we have not changed that much from that time, because when we see the wastewater treatment plants in Europe, when they say that they are energy neutral, you will hear quite a lot of, we were able to be energy neutral. It's the same process as this. We pick the carbon from the wastewater, we put it in a digester that is under anaerobic conditions, and we produce biogas. And that biogas then is used for the operation of the treatment plant. And sometimes you also have because when you convert the biogas, then you also produce excessive heat, and this heat is used to warm up houses and the neighborhoods, and you will see these initiatives happening. But all over the world, biogas is the most common form to recover carbon. Then you have what we call biopolymers. And biopolymers basically is everything that has a carbon into it. So usually with other elements, of course. Cellulose recovery is something that is increasing a lot in Europe. For instance, in the Netherlands, there are a few treatment plants that do this. Of course, the cellulose comes from the toilet paper that we use. Of course, in places where they don't use toilet paper, there is not an emphasis on that. But you can recover cellulose to use in all sorts of construction material and all sorts of materials that can be done from that. Then you have EPS. Basically, EPS is extracellular polymeric substances. And I know that you are not technical people, but I will just explain a little bit. So cells, we are all made of cells, and cells excrete, so they send out sugars and proteins. So that's what normally cells do under stress or under certain conditions. They do this. And in wastewater treatment plants, you can actually have a microbial community, the bacteria that usually treats the wastewater. They can produce this EPS, these proteins and these carbohydrates. And this can be used for a number of materials, industrial materials that can be used. But here you see also the arrow going to the farm, because actually the EPS can retain a lot of a lot of water. And you can use that as for a coating of a fertilizer or something in the soil. So to increase the moisture of your soil. Then we have PHAs, and that's another long chemical name that I will not bother you with this, but just think that these are bioplastics, plain and simple. Bacteria also can do that. They, instead of having the oil-based plastics, they can make bioplastics, and they're called PHAs. And then we have new tendencies that are innovations within wastewater treatment plant. That is volatile fatty acids, so fats that can be recovered from wastewater, and proteins that there is quite a few technologies that are being developed to be able to use this back into industry, to industrial processes. And then we have the elements. So where I was a few slides back, the elements are crucial for our soils, and the soils are crucial for the planet's health. So if you don't have a healthy soil, nothing else is healthy. No, not your food, not your water, nothing. So you need healthy soils. And wastewater is very rich in all these elements. So these are macro elements. What is here? Nitrogen, phosphate, potassium, calcium, magnesium. You can recover them. What you see, the pictures here on top, you see on the left side, that's struvite, that it's currently allowed to use that in fields in Europe. It took a very long time. It took like 10 years to get the legislation correct. So from end of waste legislation to support the use of this fertilizer, but that is basically ammonium phosphate and magnesium together. It forms a precipitate. And the blue one on the right side is a very new innovation that is not commercialized yet, but it will be in the coming years. That is Vivianite, is a mineral that can absorb phosphate. And you can also recover these microelements, so iron, zinc, copper, manganese. There's a whole long list of elements that we are now developing the technologies to recover them, so we can use them back to industrial processes. A lot of times they're recovered from industrial processes, and we can use also back into agriculture. So, because of your background, I'm not going to go extensively here on technologies. I can only tell you that we have a large array of all sorts of technologies to treat different types of wastewater. So from municipal, like domestic wastewater that we have from our households, to industrial wastewaters, there is all sorts of technologies available, and we can produce all sorts of water as well. So I think that one of the funny things that a lot of people asked me is that, oh, can you produce drinking water? It's a very common question. So we can, from wastewater, we can produce drinking water, yes. But the question is, do we want to produce drinking water? Because the water that we drink per day is very little compared to the water that we use. So for instance, us in Europe, we use 120, 130 liters per person per day, and you will drink about 10, right? So because you're cooking and it's not just drinking from bottle. So actually the amount of water that we drink is so low that we should have an attitude we should have an approach to use the water according to the where you're going to use it. So if you are going to have a water, you need a large quantity of water for agriculture, you should treat it so you can use it in agriculture. And that might even mean that you still have some nutrients left, because the nutrients are important for agriculture. If you want to use it for what you see sometimes, people then use it for flushing toilets, then you have a different type of treatment needed, or for industry. So industry, if you want to use it for cooling water, you don't want water that has a lot of salts in it. So you remove those salts. So all these technologies are available, but what is really, really important to keep in mind is that you should use the technology according to the needs, like where do you want to have the water, for what? Okay. So I develop and I work mostly with eco-technologies. So, okay, I'm going to make a little break. Sundus, I'm going to make a little break if somebody has a question here, because now I go into the eco-technologies part. So, was everything clear up to now?
There is nothing in the chat, but if anyone have a question, please put it in the Q&A, like button there. And I already put like a first conversation. So if you are not able to see it, you can put your question as well on the chat.
Okay.
Yep.
Nobody, everything very crystal clear up to now. So I will continue then.
Please, thank you.
Okay, so I work with eco-technologies, and eco-technologies basically are technologies that use natural processes to treat wastewater and recover valuable resources. They're biologically based, because a lot of the technologies, there is a a lot of technologies available in wastewater treatment that are physical chemical, like filtration is just a membrane that filters a physical treatment. And if you have advanced oxidation, or if you add ozone to a wastewater, then it's a chemical that you're adding to the wastewater. But biological treatment usually works with microbes. So all microbial consortia, and you here have some examples. So we have from the left, you have the big macroalgae. So these are big farms where they can recover the nutrients, but it's a lot on the microbial community around these plant systems. And then I have here on this right side, you see a lot of people see that all over the world you have wetlands, right? So wetlands are very common anywhere in the world. You can have the wetlands like you have here with layers like sand filtration incorporated, but you can have like floating wetlands. And in the floating wetlands, actually, most of the processes, the biological processes, happens underneath the plant level. So the microbiome is the one that does most of the recovery. So even in a normal wetland with soil, so nitrogen is removed by plants, but phosphate isn't, or to a very minimum. So you will see that in a normal wetland, they will put a phosphate absorbing layer to be able to remove the phosphate, because otherwise the plants by themselves, they won't take it. So microbes play a real important role on technology and wastewater treatment. I cannot. So this is a technology that I've developed from 2017. So it's called the photogranules. Basically, what you see here on the video is granules of microalgae and bacteria, and so they run on free available sunlight, natural light. They have lower greenhouse gas emissions because the algae, like any photosynthetic organism, like trees, they uptake CO2. The biomass is very rich in nutrients and also all other compounds. There are pigments, there are these PHAs, the EPS that I was telling you about, and that's very good for bringing it back into the circular economy. And the nice thing is that you can have these systems in a modular system, and they can treat different types of wastewater. So you have the example of, like, you see the picture of one granule, and what you see in the middle is a confocal image. So this is a microscope image where we stain certain organisms, and we say, okay, these are filamentous cyanobacteria, so microalgae. Then we have the bacteria, the nitrifiers, so they remove the nitrogen or they remove the phosphate. And what is very nice in these systems is that the microalgae that is in the granule, it produces the oxygen needed for the bacteria, and the bacteria produces the CO2 needed for the microalgae. So this is called in ecology a syntrophic relationship. So you do not need to aerate such a reactor. And usually aeration is one of the big costs in wastewater treatment. So this is a great advantage of this technology. And what is also very nice is that you can think of this granule a bit like an ecosystem. So you have all these different communities, all these different species, and you can actually enrich the granule with whatever community you want to have a certain function. For instance, you can have, like on the top that you see here, we had polyphosphate accumulating organisms. So these PAU, it's just a group of organisms. And by doing that, by enriching the granule with these organisms, we can have a higher recovery of phosphate. We can have up to 6 times more recovery of phosphate than if we would not have this community. Or you can have, if you have a wastewater that has a lot of nitrogen and you need to remove that fast, you can add, for instance, this other group of organisms that are the anemones, and then they are very good at removing nitrogen from ammonia to elemental nitrogen. And then you can also remove it, like I have colleagues in the south of France that are using these photogranules to clean biogas, for instance. So they use methanogens, it's another group of organisms. The bottom line is that you can, in these engineered ecosystems, we can create desired functions. And this could be for pollutant removal or for resource recovery, whatever you want to do with your wastewater. And we have, I'm not going to go too much into detail with this, but we have cleaned, for instance, surface water in the Netherlands. It's clean, right? But it's not that clean. So in the summer, we still have algae blooms. So because the nutrients concentration in the summer are still too high. So we have tested and we can actually remove all these nutrients from the surface water with the photogranules. Because this is a water that the water doesn't have the quality to be ecologically safe, but it is too diluted to go into a wastewater treatment plant. So you need to have solutions also to treat our polluted ecosystems. And this worked really nice. And one of the things that I find really important when we are looking into circular economy is that we need to start from the end. So from the product that you actually want to have. So imagine that a farmer says, oh, I'm going to grow tomatoes, and the tomatoes need to have a certain composition of the fertilizer, needs to have so much carbon, so much nitrogen, phosphate, and all these other elements. And we can actually steer the community in the reactor. We can change who does what in the reactor. And we do that by changing, for instance, temperature, pH, or light, or other operation conditions. And then we can create this fertilizer specific for a certain crop. And this is good. For instance, what you see, a lot of times farmers, they add fertilizers, and these fertilizers have an excess of nitrates, for instance. Nitrogen is very common, a huge problem in the Netherlands. So they add to a field, they add the fertilizer, and then the excess of nitrogen leaches into the soil, into the waterways, polluting the waterways. So if you could change your technology to create a product already in the end, that would be a really resource recovery oriented technology. And I think that is what we also need for the future. So this technology, we are now testing it in Jordan. And then fortunately, due to the Middle East situation, I was going to go there in 2 weeks to start a pilot that was going to run for 1 year in Amman, just north of Amman, in a Palestinian refugee camp. And I'm not able to go, and we cannot start the pilot due to the situation now in the Middle East. And this is how sometimes we are so dependent on geopolitical stability, right, to be able to also do our work. And so, but yeah, this is, I hope that in a few months we are able to start this, and this will be very nice, because now we will really try the technology in the field for 1 year, and then we hope that with that technology, and we have a few, like 2 companies here, that we can then build systems to export to other places in the world. So one of the things that it's often asked also is it safe? So do biomass that is recovered from wastewater, is it safe? It's a very valid question, huh? Because we are all here preaching, everybody that works in technology, we have wonderful technology and we can remove this and that and create all these resources. But we need to be able to, whatever resource we create needs to be able to be used safely back into society. And that's the responsibility that we have. The compounds that are mostly in wastewater that are seen as unsafe are organic micropollutants. These are pharmaceuticals, cleaning products, a lot of compounds that are persistent in the environment, human pathogens, so the coliforms, the E. coli that make people ill, and heavy metals that also create a lot of long-term diseases for people. The organic micropollutants, so unfortunately they are everywhere and increasing, because it's not only on the pills that we take as humans, and you see the population is also, we're getting older and older and older, right? Which is nice, I would say, for at least the majority of people thinks that is a good thing that we're getting older, but that also means that we take more and more medication. And even though we can, so when a doctor prescribes a medication to us, it is always prescribed in excess. So you will actually pee part of the medication. That is a guarantee. And if you take paracetamol, like we all take when we have a headache, that's not really a problem, because if you just aerate it a bit, it all disappears. But if you take certain compounds, like compounds that people take for antidepressives or antiepileptic, or complex compounds, they actually are not easily degraded in a wastewater treatment plant, and they finish up in surface water. On top of that, because of our intensive way of producing food, we use more and more antibiotics for our animals, the animals that we grow. And they also, through diffuse pollution, so it doesn't go to a wastewater treatment plant, but it goes into the fields, and it also finishes up in the waterways. And then there is the effect, like what you see here on the right side, the aquatic food chain, is that we know that some of these persistent compounds, like this is a phytoplankton, so an algae, so a very small organism, and then it gets eaten along the chain, the aquatic food chain, and there is a biomagnification of these contaminants. So it also increases every time that it goes up the food chain. So for instance, when you're eating mussels, and I really like seafood is very nice. But don't forget that mussels are they are filter feeders, and that means that they are accumulating all these organic micropollutants. So do not eat them on a regular basis, because they are increasing your organic micropollutant concentration in your blood. And there is also all the other chemicals, because you see, it's not just the personal care products and the pharmaceuticals that we take, antibiotics that the cows and the pigs take. It's that we use a lot of chemicals. In our society, we introduce more, in the Netherlands, we introduce more than 100,000 different chemicals per year in our system. And very few of them are actually done a proper risk assessment. And why is that? Is because risk assessments need a lot of tests. It's like in the pharmaceutical industry, if you need to put a chemical out, you need to have a lot of test steps, right? And this is also for chemicals. So what they do is that they use indicators. They say, oh, this chemical has a bit of a similar structure as this other chemical that is already used in the market. So, okay, it can go, right? So that's a bit of the approach. So that's why we don't have so many risk assessments. But what is happening is that we're adding all these chemicals, not really understanding what is the consequence of adding these chemicals into our environment, and also to public health. Because whatever is going into the environment, an aquatic ecosystem, terrestrial, it will finish up in us, right? And a good example of this is probably some of you have heard, is the PFAS crisis. So these are forever chemicals. PFAS is a compound that joins carbon with fluor, So fluor is one of the elements. This is a very strong bond. So it's very difficult to break this. So that's why it stays so persistent. And you find these PFAS, for instance, if you have this non-sticking pan in your house, or the jacket that you go to the mountains that's waterproof, all these waterproof systems, they are made of PFAS. So, and it was funny because just yesterday it came on the Dutch news that, people like to have chicken at home, right? So in their backyard, they have this, what they call the hobby chicken. And they see that the chicken of people that have them at home have 3 times more PFAS concentration than the ones of the supermarket, which is very sad that we are in that situation. And the reason for that is because the worms that are in the soil are concentrating all these PFAS, and PFAS is carcinogenic. So, we just need to think different how we're going to put all these chemicals. They're very handy, but they're very harmful to our environment. And I think we should look into alternatives. And for me, the alternatives is always looking to nature. So, you see here, this is a known example for biomimicry, that is the lotus plant. And you see how the water and also dust does not stay on the leaves. And then when you go deeper into understanding the chemistry in these leaves, you can create products that create that permeability. So there is, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, and I think we will share these slides afterwards, but if not, then we can send you the link, or you can see it, the link. So there is, what we do nowadays, most of the industries do the normal chemistry, right? So the inorganic, organic chemistry. They are another trend of chemistry and products based on green chemistry. So these are compounds that should not be harmful for the environment and should be biodegradable by nature. So therefore, preventing all these persistent compounds in our environment. And there is this TED talk by Lloyd Boston that is very interesting to hear if you're interested in the topic. So I do think that we are neglecting the biggest library that we have, that is the library of nature, just looking at nature for its solutions and being able to copy that, because we got a bit of a decoupling of, we think that sometimes we don't belong to nature, which is very wrong, because we're very dependent on it and we can learn a lot from it. And of course, if we decrease biodiversity, the risk is that we're also decreasing all these processes and functions that we could learn and copy. So there is very important to keep good ecological systems. So what is needed for circularity? We need technologies that can produce our products, and we need them to be clean. So create safe solutions, safe water, safe resources. But technology is not going to be all. And I can tell you that when we are doing resource recovery from wastewater, there's things that are very important, that you produce enough quantity and of enough quality. Because if you're saying to an industry or a farmer, or you can use this product, if he needs 100 tons per day and you can give him 10, he's also not going to be happy. So you need to create products that you can bring into the system at the quantity and the quality that is needed. We need to have legislation that favors that supports. So like the example of the struvite, but it took so long to be able to utilize struvite. And we have a lot of urgency of the circular economy. So we need to find ways of bringing these waste products back into the system. And the other thing is public acceptance, because a lot of, look, if I have 2 glasses of water here and I tell you, this one is super treated, but it's reclaimed, and this one comes from the top of the mountains, most of you will pick the top of the mountains, right? Even though PFAS is also seen at the top of the mountains, by the way. But so acceptance that we will only sustain with so many people if we recover the resources. And I think that we can do this, learn from practice. So I do a lot of research, being a scientist in the lab, and we are very happy when we can test it in a pilot scale. But the idea is really to be able to go from lab to application. So work with all the partners and all the stakeholders that are involved in technology implementation. So already understand that when we are developing a technology for resource recovery, that the users can already give feedback of what they need. And also the governments, everybody that should be involved. What I really like, that is this living lab context. So you can involve everybody, the private sectors, the knowledge institutes, the public actors and the users. Everybody is involved in this technology development, and you can have feedback loops back into the lab to improve technology. And I think then we really gain all of it. We gain a lot of knowledge, experience, and technology can really develop fast. And of course, I think we really need to learn how to reduce, because more is not better, and especially when our resources are limited. So gonna finalize by saying that, yeah, you can recover a lot of resources from wastewater. Eco-technologies enable us to design these engineered ecosystems that have a targeted function, certain pollutant removal, certain compound recovery. And I hope that we, in the coming years, we can prove this to be true and have real success stories that will change our world from a linear system to a circular system. And yes, here a list of many students, many people that have contributed to all the work that we do. And luckily, we have had quite a lot of funding throughout all these years to be able to do very nice research. And thank you for listening.